All right. Well, hello, everyone. Good morning. 2024 marks a big anniversary year for our industry. It's the anniversary of three watershed events that changed the way that we look at the world, shaped our security strategies, and taught us that the work that we do to protect consumers and the brands that we love is never going to stop. It's 20 years since what they first called the largest hack in human history. Unencrypted card data and PII impacting 40 million consumers was stolen from one of the world's largest credit card processors. It ushered in the dawn of the identity theft age. It's the 20th anniversary of PCI DSS, when the card associations, in a bold move, consolidated their disparate security programs, giving us one ring to rule us all, right? Giving us a common framework, a blueprint for our security strategies, giving us this community, giving a way to assess our progress, giving rise to our focus on protecting data in transit and data at rest. It's the 11th year anniversary of the hack at my wife's favorite retailer. 45 million more consumers were impacted, 70 million identities were stolen, including my own, maybe yours. That breach was driven through a third-party supply chain partner, an HVAC vendor. It taught us that our adversaries are cunning and skillful, constantly evolving. We've made a lot of progress, but we still face a very, very big, unaddressed third-party risk, which actually impacts the vast majority of the world's consumer-facing websites. It's given rise to the need for us to focus on protecting data at the point of input, as it's being entered into the forms that power our online businesses. We're here today to give you a sneak peek into the 2024 Verizon Payment Security Report. Source Defense has provided never-before-seen analysis of 7,000 of the world's largest websites. It was our desire to give you a brief into the threat landscape and the attack surface. And Verizon continues with this version of the report in giving guidance on how to drive effective compliance and security programs. Now, this slide right here is clearly a use of mine and Ciske's favorite catfishing photos, because that ain't me. 20 years in cybersecurity took my eyesight away, gave me an ever-increasing gut, right, driven by all my stress eating, and a lot of gray hair,
Steve, I don't think we say gray, we say platinum.
Platinum. Yeah, I like that. It's good. Gives some positivity. But I'm Steve Ward. I'm CMO at Source Defense. We're a proud PCI PPO. We're the pioneer in e-skimming security. We've been doing this since 2014. We saw the threat coming. Our co-founder, Hadar, who's in the audience today, got ahead of this threat and drove our product to market. For the last couple of years, we've been communicating and educating the global community, merchants, QSAs, PSPs. We're active here in trying to solve this problem, to protect data at the point of input. It's our sole focus, and we're doing it for level 1s, all the way down to Mrs. Wiggins' flower shop at the level 4. Okay? We believe that security should be democratized, and it shouldn't just be for the big boys. Everybody's got this problem. Proud to be standing here with Verizon, big brand, way bigger brand than Source Defense. We're proud for their partnership and them looking to us to engage us here. Ciske, who's on stage with me, probably needs no introduction, but Ciske, why don't you say a couple words?
Well, I'm Ciske from Oosten. I'm head of global business intelligence at the cybersecurity consulting services division at Verizon Business, and I've been the lead author of the payment security report for the past 13 years.
Okay, thanks, Ciske. All right, so let's jump into it. As we're all well aware, at least should be, DSS 4.x, right? We've already got a point revision, so we got to call it X now. Brought with it 50 plus changes. Probably the most impactful is this focus on e-skimming security. And if this conference for the last 2 days is any indication, 40% of the vendors here talking about it, multiple conversations across the speeches, it's one of the biggest things on everybody's mind, right? Why the shift? Why the need to focus on protecting data at the point of input? It's because our business landscape has changed, right? And the adversaries, sort of predictably, have moved the needle to target us where we do business, right? Online business is something that's commonplace now. And it's not just for retail. If you're a healthcare company, a financial services company, insurance company, gaming, entertainment, travel, transportation, you name it, every industry has a complex, increasingly growing online presence that's becoming a storefront, okay? And that presence is driven through a vast third-party supply chain network. And we'll dig into that here in a minute. So, there's a gap in security, there's a gap in third-party risk management that the council said, we got to do something about, right? We got to tackle this problem because enough is enough. And so let's see how we got here, right? How did we get to this need to protect data at the point of input? About 2015, when the US finally came along with the EMV liability shift, we saw adversaries recognizing that card not present was going to be the new battleground on the new playing field. Okay? And almost like clockwork, we saw the dawn of MageCard. 2016, MageCard attacks start popping up. What are MageCard? E-skimming, digital skimming, clickjacking, formjacking. These are all names that are synonymous with the same threat. Okay? Within a short 2-year period of time, we see the first headlines of major breaches impacting big brands. My favorite airline, one of the largest ticketing companies in the world. Now, not the same kind of scope that we saw in the dawn of the data theft age of what I was talking about earlier on those breaches, but still very impactful, and so much so that we saw a bridge of the gap between sort of a data theft and a data privacy fine, with the first ever GDPR fine levied $200 million against that airline in 2019. Now in 2020, right, we all know what happened. The world got flipped on its head. So what happened? We all rushed to a new way of interacting with the world. Everything went online. Massive increase, exponential increase in e-commerce or online business. The adversary basically salivating, they might as well just been like chewing on their tongues because they see this move, this massive shift in the way people are doing business, and they know that security has not caught up. Compliance has not caught up. They continue these high-profile breaches. Now, we stop seeing as much in the headlines. It's not because the attacks stop. I'd posit that it's because, A, we don't have the technologies to manage, monitor, and look and even discover these attacks as they're occurring. And B, there were a lot of other things in the headlines. 2020 was kind of dominated by some other news. Also, what you saw was, and this sort of supports the need to focus on third-party risk management, a change in ransomware attacks and these broader supply chain attacks impacting like companies like SolarWinds and Ciske, and becoming a real threat to national security. So it emphasizes the need. The bad guys like the supply chain. They know we don't protect the supply chain well. They know there's weaknesses in the supply chain, so they target the supply chain. In 2022, we get PCI DSS 4.0 introduced, right? And the controls are future dated for e-skimming. 643, 11.6.1, you got until March of 2025 to get it done. Now, it's important to know that that was to give us time to get it done, not time to wait to get it done. And there's a lot of merchants that I think are going to be behind, caught on their heels with responding to this in the next 6 months. Now is the time to act. You got to get moving. And you got to get moving, and you got to solve this problem. You should have done it because it's a risk, not because it's a compliance requirement. It's the difference between security and risk, right? Or security and compliance. But in 2023, sort of supporting this thing, we see 100 million credit cards available online in the dark web, largely card not present. They're stolen through the e-commerce channel. We've been doing the research, and some of the research we're going to get to in a second, since roughly 2018. And in 2024, we saw a 200% increase over that 6-year period of time in that digital supply chain, in the use of these third parties on the website. So you have till March of 2025, but you should really get moving now. You should understand it's not that complex, but you should understand why you need to get moving. So, let's talk about the modern website. Your website isn't. And what do I mean by that? So we looked at 7,000 of the world's largest websites, and we found roughly 82% of the code on those websites aren't in control of the merchant. It's a cobbled together network of third-party services. So it's chatbots, and it's video, and it's multimedia services, it's the social plugins, it's analytics from the back end that we need, it's retargeting, right, to go get people back into your shopping cart. These are all the services that are cobbled together. So, roughly, what is that? 28% of your website, or 18% of your website? Sorry, I'm not good at math. Is your own, right? And what's happening is the adversary is able to not just now target one HVAC vendor with one set of network access credentials, but 18 plus partners that are plugged into the average website. We saw 138,000 scripts, 128,000 scripts across these 7,000 websites, roughly 18 scripts per page. Okay, so you got 18 HVAC vendors that don't just have network access keys. They're literally sitting in line on the consumer transaction, looking over the shoulder of the consumer. Okay, by design, you're allowing them to do this, almost like I used to do with Kathleen Furbach, my best friend, in geometry class in high school, right? They're looking in, they're seeing what's going on. What are these things doing? What are these partners doing on our website? And how does it open up access to the bad guys? Okay, so it's interesting. I've been in cyber for a long time. When you look at some of the activities that we're allowing by design for our partners to do, it's almost like malware. I mean, it basically lowers the bar for the adversary so low that exploit kits for MageCart are available for less than I paid for my flight to Europe for next month's community meeting, okay? $1,200, $1,500. Why? Because the scripts on the website are already written to perform functions like changing page content, recording keystrokes, adding content, whether it be images, text, form fields, okay? Tracking website behavior, capturing and exfiltrating in the case of an adversary, or sharing data, right, outside of the website, and redirecting visitors to other URLs, to other websites, right? So when you think about what an adversary can do with all of that, it's like a super low bar of entry. And when you think about scope, this is one important thing. We think about what is written in the standard right now. The scope calls for us to focus on payment pages. But we really need to, if we think about the attack surface, focus on payment flows. And Coalfire's chimed in with a white paper you can get a copy of at our booth here later, basically saying the same thing. Why? Because if I'm the adversary, right, and I can change page content, I can put the checkout button anywhere I want, unbeknownst to you. So it's not your payment page necessarily where the threat exists. It's the entirety of the website. If I want a user to think he's checking out, all I got to do is make him think he's checking out, okay? So it's something important to look at there. But we got to get control of all of this, right? The council, has provided the details, the requirements. I'm not going to go through those. You should know enough of that now on that, or you've heard it from folks here at the conference. What I want to talk about is how to solve the problem. And this would be a good segue to hand over to Ciske here in a few minutes with the Verizon guidance. But on solving the issue, right, we should not break things to fix them. I've heard a lot of conversation over the last couple of days about changing web architecture. Why don't we just minimize the number of scripts that are running? Why don't we just isolate? Why don't we just not allow these services to have this access, or not allow these services to be in place? That's an untenable design. When you think about what these services are doing, it's the demand that we have as consumers for this voracious demand for like these interactive, great enriched experiences, and it's the demand that the business has to be able to follow the consumer wherever they go. Like, hey, I think that my phone is listening to me because I looked at that shirt, but now I'm seeing it on Instagram, right? We have to support that capability. So you don't break things to fix them. In fact, we need technologies and solutions for compliance and security that are enabling. Okay, so that's very important, number one. You don't build things to fix them either. So every time I fix my tractor, I don't go build a ratchet set. A, I don't know how to build a ratchet set. And B, I don't know how to fix my tractor. But like, it's just not a tenable solution to go and then cobble things together. Because how do I future-proof against where things are moving? How do I take the expertise that's been in industry, that's available off the shelf, and design it? Well, like my function is I'm in F&B, I'm in food and beverage, I'm a quick serve restaurant. Why am I going to go build some kind of white labeled, homegrown solution? And there's some important comments around that, around pitfalls, around CSP, and some of the guidance in the standard that you should look at that Viking Cloud shared in a white paper you can get from our desk as well. So let's get into some of the data, right? I want to cover a little bit of the background on the threat landscape, the threat surface. This is everybody's issue, regardless of industry, regardless of geography, regardless of size. Again, we looked at 7,000 of the world's largest websites. We want to kind of take on that enterprise space, but we've got a lot of visibility and data related to attacks that go after the level 4 side of the community. Across the world, what we saw, 130,000 some odd different scripts, third-party scripts, fourth-party scripts, what we call nth-party scripts. So your supply chain has a supply chain. I'm allowing Meta to run on my page, but they reach in and they talk to other partners downstream. If a compromise happens downstream, how do I ensure that it does not happen with a partner I know? So your partner is working with partners is an important thing to understand, okay? In fact, one of the other things to understand is we think about isolation a lot in the way we talk about solving for this for the requirements under the standard. It's not like these scripts are running just in non-sensitive areas. Almost half of the scripts that we saw were running on payment pages. Again, I think payment flows is the better thing to look at, but this is where the problem lies, is understanding and knowing where the stuff is. It's sitting in highly sensitive areas. Average 18 scripts have covered that. 200% increase in script utilization since 2018, 50% increase in the last 2 years. Again, risky actions being done in the benign fashion. And you also need to think about this. Many of you are probably governed by data privacy regulations as well, okay? It's not just a security issue, and it's not just a PCI issue. It does bleed into other forms of data privacy requirements, right? Because the transferring of data, the sniffing on the keylog side of things, the accessing of PII, the sharing of that, the transferring of card data, or the accessing of credentials are all things that put you in jeopardy in other aspects of your compliance regimes. Okay. I wanted to break down and give you just a little look, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Ciske, about the sub-industry side of things, okay? So we looked at it, and we found some interesting observations, some maybe, kind of pedestrian, but some that were kind of like standouts. The stronger the online presence, the more utilization of script, okay? It's just a given. But the more highly customizable the product offering, and the lower the first conversion rate, you see much, much more utilization of script across those industries. So this will provide you a little bit of a benchmark. You can take it back home, and you can go, talk to your peers about it. But apparel and fashion, right? Size, color, this goes with that, right? High use of scripts, very, very high use of scripts. Technology, similar. I need to, modify the design of my new computer, how much storage, processing power, things of that nature. Food and beverage. I want Diet Coke, I want Diet Pepsi. Arts and crafts, so it goes down, but what we see is, the use is significant across the board, across every sub-industry, every merchant type, level 1 to level 4. But there's some detail in the report. We'll have copies of it as you guys are walking out, and you can come by our booth and talk about it, and I'll hand it over to Ciske now.
Hey, thanks, Steve, for that fantastic overview of how important it is to manage the risk of third-party scripts and the challenges that organizations face to do so. It's in terms of what we see in the industry and how we move forward to truly have perspective on how deep these issues go and how do we overcome those challenges. So I want to give you a sneak peek on the Verizon Payment Security Report, and this information that Steve just shared on Appendix A in the report really presents a very well perspective. It's quite valuable. Now, in terms of the upcoming report that will be published on the 3rd of October, in about 3 weeks from now, we've really focused on the measurement, the evaluation, and the improvement of PCI security programs. So why is that so important now? Why does it matter? So collectively, as an industry, the past 2 to 3 years, we've spent quite a bit of effort, all of us, in terms of migrating from version 3.2.1, which has been in effect for more than 5 years, to version 4.0. And soon we will have to meet the compliance requirements of version 4.0.1. So how do you know that you are successful at it? And on this slide, if you look at the way in which you achieve a structured approach for that, a logical way in which you can do this, there are 3 life cycles in the program. So about 2 to 3 years ago, for most organizations, where were we? In the planning and design stage of our 4.0 migration programs. And then we moved on to execution and management. And that was, for some organizations, about a year and a half ago, to meet this compliance deadline of March 2024, which was earlier this year. So where are we now, or where should we be? In the evaluation stage, in stage 3, to really understand how do you know what you've accomplished with all of that investment, all of the effort, all of the attention, everything that went into getting it right and meeting 4.0 requirements. How do you know that your program is effective? How do you know that you are getting done more with less and being efficient? So in terms of understanding what to aim for, many of you might most likely have read that book from Stephen Covey, published many years ago, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he said, begin with the end in mind, know what to aim for, know the success factors. So if you want to measure the actual outcome of all of your efforts on 4.0 migration, it's really important to understand you need to know how to measure the effectiveness of your program. How do you measure the effectiveness of controls? How do you know that the program itself is strategically aligned, that there are no conflicts between your compliance efforts, your security efforts, and the rest of the organization that will create constraints and lower the performance? And we've been tracking the performance of PCI DSS most likely longer than anybody else in our publications. It's been years. It's the 20-year history of PCI DSS. So it gives us ample opportunity to look back and say, what have we learned? You need to efficiently execute your program because you've got economic constraints. There will always be limited resources. You do not have enough people, you do not have enough money, you do not have enough time or attention. So you need to set yourself up for success and not for failure by understanding how are you going to accomplish this workload and have sustainable, control effectiveness on your requirements. So it's about sustainable performance and ongoing capability improvement. You cannot stand still with compliance. If you stand still, you will regress and you will expose the risk. So you need to move forward and continuously improve. So in terms of the payment security report, we've really looked quite hard at what are the actual challenges that organizations face. I mean, when I look at this audience, I don't just see a sea of faces. I also see individuals, people who have challenges to overcome with compliance and who need to know not just what to do, but how to do it. So what we've done with the payment security report, we've really looked at giving perspective on the problems, giving perspective on the direction of the solution, which is important, but most importantly is the how-to. How do you move forward? What exactly are the steps? How do you logically progress and get the work done, to get done more with less if you don't have all of the resources? Because in generally we don't. So with this model, the security management canvas, you can see that the program is on pillar number 5. You need quality input for quality output. I mean, in the thousands of assessments that I've done in my career, more than 2,000, you sit at a table, you see people trying to overcome these challenges or make decisions, and they lack the input that they need to actually structure their programs and move forward in a predictable manner. So you need to have investment, you need to have a security business model. That business model, so you need to express the value of your compliance, you need to execute it with a strategy. So how do you prioritize your limited resources with priority objectives to move towards an articulated goal? And then the operating model is really just a collection of documents. You cannot just have asset documents and network diagrams at a basic level. You need much more than that, functional requirements, etc. I'm not going to go into detail. But your operating model, where you are, and your target operating model, where are you aiming for? What should be your operating model, the way in which you get the work done? Frameworks and standards, we know that PCI DSS have limitations. It is not a risk management standard. You need to understand the limitations, and there are more than probably 15 PCI standards that you may have to work with, or some of them and other standards like NIST and COSO. So how do you integrate them? How do you prepare for that? And then you get to your program. So your program security really relies on the cause and effect relationships. Get the right work done ahead for your program to succeed.
Yeah, I think we went a little long here, Ciske, and they're going to drag us off with a hook. So
Yeah.
I would just say, I'm not going to read anything on the slide other than just say, we're part of this community. We want to be a part of this community. It is a community. We need to work together to solve big problems. So come and introduce yourself if you don't already know us at Source Defense. We'd love to talk to you more about our findings. We do have, again, a copy of the report available to you. It's not the full PSR. That'll be October 3rd, right?
Yeah.
But it is the appendix that focuses on the e-skimming side of things. Happy to go into that in more detail. My email, if you ever want to reach out, is just steve@sourcedefense.com. Okay, super easy. And we'd like to get to know you.
Certainly, yeah, absolutely. Reach out to us. Don't be afraid to contact us and ask questions. The knowledge out there exists. You do not have to reinvent the wheel and try to discover things by yourselves. It's been 20 years, so it's really just a matter of reaching out and learning. It's all about the philosophy of abundance, not of scarcity. So I hope this was quite valuable for you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.